Hello, my name is Katie, and welcome to my overly ambitious September TBR. The first book on my September TBR is not one that I necessarily want to finish in September. I just want to start it in September and maybe read through it slowly. And that is Warmly Inscribed, The New England Forger and Other Book Tales by Lawrence and Nancy Goldstone. This book is a book about the history of books. Lawrence and Nancy Goldstone for this book went through several libraries, specifically the Library of Congress, and they just kind of collect stories surrounding the books that are held in that collection. So I'm really thinking that this will be a good one, and I think this is one that I'm just kind of going to pick up every now and again and read a story and get through it that way. The next book on my TBR is one that you may have already heard me talk about if you watched the History Challenge tag, and that is Empty Mansions, The Mysterious Life of Huguette Clark and the Spending of a Great American Fortune by Bill Dedman and Paul Clark Newell Jr. Yes, I went and purchased it right after I was done filming that video. This book follows the story of a mansion that the author found for sale and that looked as though it had been untouched for decades. He did some research and discovered that this house was at the center of an inheritance battle, and the woman in question, Huguette Clark, was actually she was a bit of a character. She seems like she was an interesting person to learn about, so I'm really excited to get started on this one. The next book on my TBR is book 5 in a series, and that is The Mortal World by Genevieve Cogman. This is a part of the Invisible Library series. I don't hear it talked about a ton on BookTube, although I think it should be, because it is basically about a librarian spy. It is her job as an agent of the library to go into other worlds and procure specifically rare copies of books and bring them back to the central library that she works for. This series has been so much fun. I haven't found that I enjoy all the books the same amount, but I have enjoyed all the books. So I'm really excited to keep going with this one. The next book on my TBR is The Wife by Alafair Burke. I don't know a ton about this one because it's a thriller, and I'm just going to keep it that way. I've been finding book lists on like Pinterest and things like that, and have just been selecting a few and purchasing them, because I don't want to know when it comes to a thriller. I just want to dive in completely blind. The next book on the TBR is one that Olive, from a book Olive, talks about all the time. It is her absolute favorite book. If you watch her at all, you probably already know what I'm going to say. And that is Rules of Civility by Amor. I read A Gentleman in Moscow, I think either in June or July, and I liked it. It wasn't maybe my favorite thing I've ever read, but I found Amor writing style to be different from a lot of things that I read. So I'm interested to see how I'm going to get on with this one. Next up is one of my Book of the Month books, The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah. This book takes place in the future. It's a sci-fi, and multiverse travel has become possible. However, you cannot travel to other universes in which that iteration of you still is alive. Our main character here has a talent, shall we say, for dying in other universes, and she becomes selected as a prime candidate for multiverse travel. However, there's a bit of a mystery element thrown in when the last few iterations of her start mysteriously dying in other universes. So I'm keen to get on with this one. Next up is another book that I got from Book of the Month in August, and that is The Night Swim by Megan Goldin. This is another thriller, and all I really know about it is that it follows a woman who has a podcast. It's a true crime podcast, and I believe she solves a cold case on it, and she ends up receiving this note asking for her help. So I'm curious to see where this is going to go. Next is, it's a hefty book. It is Cibola Burn by James S.A. Corey. I have been needing to get on with this series, oh my gosh, probably since last year. I finally decided that now is the time, and I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. If you don't know, this is book 4 in the Expanse series. The Expanse series is a space opera in which Earth is not really the best place to live anymore, and humans have colonized the asteroid belt as well as the moon and Mars. And we follow James Holden and his crew. In the first book is where they kind of become a crew. There's a lot going on. There's a lot. If you haven't actually watched the TV series, I believe it's on Amazon Prime, I enjoyed the first couple seasons of that. I think seasons 1, 2, I think just seasons 1 and 2 I liked, and then after that it started pulling too far away from the books, and I just got sick of it. So, but I would still recommend the first couple seasons if the premise of the book appeals to you, but you don't want to commit yourself to, like, I don't know, 600 pages. Maybe try that instead. Next on my list for September is Our Revolution by Bernie Sanders. I wanted to read this like 4 years ago and never got to it. And even though, you know, Bernie wasn't the nominee for this election cycle either, I don't really care, because there are a lot of opinions and beliefs that he holds that I find intriguing, and I want to know more about the whys and how he believes these things would work. So I'm gonna pick this up and maybe come to stronger conclusions about things. This will also be good because I'm currently taking a political science class, so I think that reading something dealing with politics might help me perform better in that class as well. The second to final book on my September TBR is The Last Castle, the epic story of love, loss, and American royalty in the nation's largest home by Denise Kiernan. I mentioned this in a video I did recently. I can't remember which one it was. I'll see if I can figure it out and then I'll link it. I've been looking forward to reading this for a long time. It's about Biltmore, which was the Vanderbilt estate in North Carolina. So I was inspired after talking about it in that video to just go ahead and pick it up already. So that's why it's now on my September TBR. The final book on my TBR is one that I don't own a physical copy of. I only have it on audio, and that's Radium Girls by Kate Moore. I have heard mostly good things about this. I think I've heard one person talk about it, they didn't really care for it that much. And I've also heard that it can be a little bit gruesome in places because it discusses the effects of radiation poisoning. So essentially these Radium Girls were women who worked in factories, I believe painting the glow-in-the-dark numbers on watches. And in order to get the points on the brushes very fine, they would put them in their mouths and make them so they could write much more detailed and neatly. And that the glow-in-the-dark paint contained radium, which is highly toxic. So I think it'll be really interesting. I think it will probably be a little bit sad, but I'm excited to get to it nonetheless. And those are all the books that I'm going to try to get to in September. I don't hold a whole lot of hope of actually getting through all of these, but that's okay. It's good to be ambitious. So if you have read any of these books, or would like to read any of these books, please comment down below. If you like my content, consider subscribing. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.